did it right this time. Yes. No banners. Yes. It only took me 17 times to get it right. The little things make me excited. They really, really do. Welcome to the After Hours Live, where you get to ask your favorite RCDD. Chuck, that's me. Whatever question is that's been going, whether it's estimating, project management, technical, life career, whatever. It's all on board. You want to know how to do hugelculture? Ask me. You want to learn how to terminate fiber? Ask me. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to do this. So, as you know, hello, Fernando. How you doing? As you know, how do we start every episode? Can somebody tell me in the chat box? How do we start it? What's the first thing we always do? What is it? What are you drinking? What are you drinking? I'm drinking ice water with a little bit of lemon essential oil because I had kidney stones. And I don't want to do that over again. And I've gone back to keto again, full hardcore, no sugar, nothing, no cheating, no chocolate donuts, none of that fun stuff. Water. Make sure you tell us in the comment box what you are drinking. Let's see. We got some comments in here. Let's see. What are we drinking? Fernando's drinking a beer. Well, it is after hours, Fernando. So have at it, buddy. Where's mine? Huh? And let's see. So he's drinking IPA beer. George is drinking root beer. I'm drinking nothing, but it might be later. Oh, okay. And of course, how'd I know Shotzi was drinking Diet Dr. Pepper? You forgot you left out out of a 2-liter bottle, Shotzi. Yeah, there you go. So how's everybody's week been going on so far? It's been a busy, exciting week. Found out that we might be traveling again here soon. Trying to set up some July classes. And also did a really cool interview with Tim Coleman. We talked about the code book and why it's so confusing. I did another interesting interview with a young lady who just got into the ICT industry. Her name is Hallie Kane from America Inseltech. I had to think about that for a second. And I got another interesting interview coming up that's going to be recorded for next Monday. I am interviewing Christopher Hobbs, training manager at Big C. So if you have a question that you want to have asked to straight to Big C, get it to me now. I mean, because I think we're scheduled to do it on my lunch break tomorrow. So that should be really, really interesting, right? How often do you get to have a big wig like that on your show? I'm excited. I can't wait. Now, as you know, I started something new, right? With our after hours, and that is the Acronym Challenge. The Acronym Challenge. What does GEC mean? Shotzi, you should get this one because we just learned this one in our TDMM study group. Kaylin, what's the GEC? Fernando, what's GEC? Anybody? Huh? Take a guess. I'll give you a few seconds to think about this. I'll give you a hint. It has something to do with bonding and grounding. It has something to do with bonding and grounding. And while you're typing in your responses, I'm going to take another sip of my ice cold lemon water. Give up yet? It is a very so close. George says a grounding electric conductor. Very close. It's a grounding electrode conductor. Very close. I'll give you that. I'll give you the points for that one, George. That's a good one, buddy. That's a good one. So for those who are new, remember, here's how we do this. Always, this show is for you. And so remember that it's a live question and answer. So I do have some questions that were submitted to me ahead of time. I'm going to answer them first. And then if we have time, I'll answer the live questions. Or I might answer the live questions in between. It just kind of depends on my mood. And I'm feeling pretty good today because my wife's cooking chicken. Yeah, so you might hear in a few minutes, you might hear dee, 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 dee. That's our Instapot telling us the chicken's done. And it's farm fresh chicken, by the way. There we go. So Shazi says, yeah, I typed too slow, LOL. Yeah, sure. Nah, that's fine. So let's talk about some of these questions. So the first question I got, and by the way, this is recorded. I'm challenging each and every one of you who are watching this today, right? I'm challenging you. If you know somebody who might benefit from these episodes and benefit from the podcast, would you mind sharing that with them? We're at 163 subscribers. We're slowly climbing up that hill. We had 2,000 views, lifetime views. This week, I hit over 100 downloads on the podcast. So we're making progress. Now, let's get on with the questions, because that's what you're here for. You're not here for the small chit chat, right? So as always, we got to wear our appropriate PPE to make sure that the words don't jump off the page and injure my eyes, right? Always wear appropriate PPE. My son was making fun of me over the weekend because I had some safety glasses on while I was eating dinner, because I'd left them on because I ride the motorcycle, and he was riding. You have to wear PPE to eat dinner, Dad? Yes, you do. So the first question comes from California. And this question is a doozy. That's why I'm doing this one first. And I'm paraphrasing the question. I may not have it exactly as they submitted it to me. So it says, do I believe that the foreman holds back in sharing information and the complete knowledge with apprentices, or would I say that they are fully and fairly attempting to train them? Oh, that's a great question. Here's the problem with the world. It's filled with people. That's the problem. Now, you have good people and you have bad people. So when it comes to foreman, you have good foreman and bad foreman. A good foreman absolutely will share information with you, because the better you perform, the better they perform. And they always say the sign of a good leader is how they train their replacements, right? So, being a good leader is part of that whole teaching people stuff, right? So here's the thing. But you got to teach foundational skills first. For example, for those you know me, I got a 3-acre homestead, right? We have gardens and all kinds of animals on our property. If someone were to come to me and wanted to do some work on the property as an apprentice or something like that, would I immediately start them off with conversations of hugelkultur? No. We would start off basic information. What is the difference between dirt and soil? Right? So you got to have that good foundation. So a good foreman's going to start there. He's going to start off with teaching the simple things first, like how to pull cable, how to attach that pull string to the cable, the color code. The color code's absolute. And just because you know the color code doesn't mean that you can automatically, jump the whole, I don't want to terminate jacks, I want to go straight to the closet. No, you got to terminate enough jacks that foreman feels comfortable enough with you to put you in the telecom room, to teach you how to do the telecom room, right? So that's why they're going to teach you those foundational skills first, and then they're going to work up to that closet. They're going to work up to terminating fiber and testing fiber and all that other fun stuff. Because like I said, they know that the better you perform, the better they're going to look for, as far as the management within the company. And here's another thing. I've said this many times. Right? When you teach somebody, it actually reinforces that information inside of you. It makes it more accessible to you. So you really should be mentoring somebody. Even if you don't think you have nothing to mentor somebody about, you should be mentoring people, right? And I'll tell you, here's another trait of a good foreman. A good foreman, if everything goes right on the project and the management comes out and says, man, you guys did a great job, we're going to give you all bonuses, the foreman will say, it was the crew. The crew deserves the credit. That's a good foreman right there. A good chicken's ready. A good foreman also will be the first to say, if something goes bad, it's my fault. It's my fault that this didn't go right. And that's just going to be the sign of a good foreman. Now, bad foremen, what they're going to do is they're not going to teach you, because they're going to be fearful. They're going to be afraid that if they teach you, you might be better than them. You might take your position. So they're afraid to teach you. They are. They're unfortunately, that's how some of them are. But again, that's a sign of a good leader. One of the people that I trained actually ended up becoming my boss. And I'll tell you what, it shows you, because I trained my boss, and then when my boss came time, they said, came time to lay off people. Like, we can't lay off Chuck. Chuck mentors people. Chuck trains people, right? You have somebody in your corner who's going to help you with that kind of stuff. So absolutely, a bad trainer is not going to be doing it, because they're going to be fearful of the job, and it's going to make them feel more important because they know more than you. All right. And you have to come to them all the time for information. Well, I'm done pulling cable. What do I do now? You drop the cable down the walls. You terminate it. Right. So that's a bad foreman. Now, you're going to have good foremen and you're going to have bad foremen. My personal experience is there's way more bad foremen than there are good foremen. Let me rephrase that. There's 3 types of foremen. You have the bad foreman, the really good foreman, and the ones in between. The majority of the ones in between. There are bad foremen who don't want to teach you that kind of stuff. They're great foremen that they'll absolutely will mentor you, train you, teach you, help you advance in your career path. Absolutely will. But they might have a bad day. They might have gotten into a fight with their wife. They might not have gotten their triple latte cappuccino whatever from Starbucks that morning. They might be having a bad day, and they might take it out on you, right? So there's all those kinds of things going on. But here's the thing. We don't live in that vacuum. So again, you could have all different kinds. And just because there's good foremen and bad foremen, that doesn't mean that you don't have any responsibilities as a crew member, right? So as a crew member, number one, best thing you can do, be a good listener. Okay. There's a difference between hearing and listening. Big difference, right? Quite often I hear my wife. I hate to admit this because she's standing literally like 5 feet right here, shaking her head at me right now. Because quite often I'm doing 3 things at once and she'll start talking to me and I'm kind of like focused on 3 other things. I hear her, but I'm not listening to her, right? You have to be a good listener. You have to be willing to take direction. You have to understand that this person who's trying to mentor you may know more about this industry or whatever that task is than you do. And they're trying to teach you. So don't come off with that attitude right out of the gate. The second thing is be patient. Be patient. I mentioned that earlier. Don't think just because, you pull cable for 2 weeks and you terminated 22 jacks that now all of a sudden you can go out and terminate fiber. You got to work those skills up. So be patient. You will get taught those skills. Just be patient. Be patient. And then make sure that you understand that you got to walk before you run. You have to walk before you run. So do I feel that a good foreman should be teaching and mentoring and telling you everything? Absolutely. But on the same token, the foreman's not going to start talking to you about risk management when you've only been pulling cable for 3 days. So they're going to give you what information they think that you can easily digest, and they're going to mentor you along. A bad foreman won't. And that's the unfortunate reality of the world that we live in. It really, really is. And if you have ever worked with or you know somebody, put it in the chat box. Let me know. Let me know who it is. So, Shotzi has a great comment there. Look for a good foreman saying "we" or "I never use I if I can help it." Exactly right. No, I hate using that word "I" as well. And Fernando says he hasn't found a mentor yet. Bixie actually has a mentoring program, Fernando. Look them up. They will hook you up with a mentor. I'm a mentoring. I would take you on, but I'm already mentoring 3 people right now. I'm mentoring a Bixie person and then 2 people outside of that. So I've got my plate full with mentoring right now. If you want to be patient, I'll be more than happy to take you on next year when 2 of those people fall off. And if that's what you're interested in, let me know. We'll figure that out in the long run. So the next question is, and this one came from Shotzi in our TDMM study group. And I told him I was going to put it in today's class, and here it is. So he says, is it acceptable to put a bonding conductor on both sides, front and back, of a bus bar? The answer to that is no. And the reason it's not, and you can probably think, well, if I can put some on the back, I can double the amount of conductors I can send to that bus bar. And the reason you don't want to do that is, number one, you're supposed to be doing annual inspections on your bonding and grounding systems. So when you're doing annual inspections, one of the things you're going to be doing is you're going to be looking for corrosion, right? You're going to be looking for damage. You're going to be looking for looseness. And remember, that bus bar is literally like 2 inches off of that wall. You're not going to be able to put your head up to the wall and look up and see if it's got any green stuff on the connectors. So you're not supposed to put conductors on the back side of a bus bar. Okay, so hello, Mark. Welcome back. Glad to see you, buddy. What you drinking, Mark? I'm drinking ice water. So then the next question is question number 3. Mike, you just missed a great conversation on, do I think foremen should train their people? So question number 3. What say you, Mark? Let me know. Question number 3. Is there a specific reason to use T568A instead of T568B for residential installs? Yes, there is. So as you probably know, there are two wiring schemes, T568A and T568B. Think about this. When you look at a connector, right? And I happen to have one sitting on my desk. I'll hold that up there, right? Pin 1 is on the left, pin 8 is on the right. And we put certain color conductors on certain pins, and we have different configurations for different applications. So the two most common are going to be 568A and 568B, right? So he's walking through Atlanta Airport, so I'm missing it. Not a problem. It's recorded. You can always come back and watch the recorded version afterwards. So the 568A and B is what's used for commercial installs, what's allowed per the standards. So the very center pins 4 and 5, right? 1, 2, 3, yeah, 4 and 5 is the blue pair. And then pins 3 and 6 is going to be green for B and orange for A. Now, the reason I want you to use A for residential wiring scheme is because there are a lot of houses out there in the United States that were wired up with a third wiring scheme called USOC, Universal Service Order Code. It's a nested pair design. So the blue pins are on 4 and 5, the orange are on 3 and 6, the brown are on 2 and 7, and the green's on 2 and 7, the brown's on 1 and 8. So it's a nested pair design. So there's a lot of houses that use both pairs because they have two dial tones in their house because they have, for whatever reason, they got a fax machine, they got teenage daughters. So the A wiring scheme, the blue and the orange, line up with that USOC wiring scheme, which allows them to have those two lines still in their house. That's why they require A wiring scheme for residential uses, and you can use A or B for commercial building use. And some people try to tell you that A performs better than B or B performs better than A. No, it doesn't. They both perform equally well. Don't let people fool you. So that question actually came from Nevada. Shotzi's question came from Ohio. And so this question, actually, I wrote this down. This wasn't a question that was submitted to me. This actually came up in class today. And I thought it was such a great question that I'm going to include it. So we were talking about shielded cabling. Specifically, we were talking about FTP, foil twisted pair cabling. So for those who may not know what foil twisted pair is, that's where each pair has a foil wrap around it. Each pair has a foil wrap around it. It was U/FTP. So the question was, is the twisted pair have different, hold on, I got to put my safety glass so I can see this. Is the pair twisted at different rates in UFTP? Now, remember, in unshielded twisted pair cabling, we differ the rates of twist so the pairs don't interfere with each other inside that same cable jacket. If you've got foil twisted pair, each pair is inside its own foil shield, so theoretically you would think that they wouldn't interfere with each other. So the twist rate should be among 4 pair in that U/FTP. I didn't know the answer. This reached out to one of our engineers, and he actually grabbed a piece of cable and tore it apart and says, 2 of the pairs were twisted at different rates. And he said, yeah, I don't understand this because it's in foil twisted pair. So we reached out to one of our engineers at the cable manufacturing plant. And now he gave us back a 4-paragraph explanation, but pulling it down, even though they're all in their own individual shields, they share the same ground plane. So there is still some interference that can happen. So yes, they still will change the twist rates, even though they're in a U/FTP. So I thought that was interesting. That's something cool. That's something Chuck learned today, right? And then, so this question comes from Virginia, and it says, Chuck, how much slack should I leave above the ceiling for a network drop? You forgot to tell me where, okay? Now, if you're talking about, why would you want to leave slack? Let's talk about that first. Because if the customer wants to move something, they want to move a rack, they want to move a drop, that's why you want to leave slack. But you don't want to leave so much slack that you don't exceed, that you don't exceed that 90 meters or 295 feet, right? So that's going to help with that. It's going to help with that storage. So what you want to do is, if it's in the closet, you want to have enough to reach the furthest corner to the room, right? And go from floor to ceiling. Furthest corner in the room, floor to ceiling for copper cabling. In the telecom room for fiber, it's going to be to the furthest corner, floor to ceiling, plus 10 feet. Furthest corner, floor to ceiling, plus 10 feet. at the work area. Copper, you want to leave 1 feet, and fiber, you want to leave 3 feet. Okay, but always make sure that you don't exceed your 295 with that rule. Okay. Now, next question. This one comes from North Carolina, and this says, Chuck, would you recommend pre-terminated fiber or raw fiber that you got to field terminate? Another great question. So, pre-terminated fiber, for those who may not know what that means you give a length to the manufacturer. They will cut that piece of cable, and then they'll terminate it, test it, and ship it back to you. So then all you got to do is literally just put it underneath the floor, put it in the ceiling, put it right in the enclosure, boom, because it comes to you pre-terminated and pre-tested. What are the advantages there? So the first advantage is, it's gonna make your job go faster because you're not having to terminate, you're not having to test fiber. So it's gonna make that job go a lot faster, a lot easier. And you don't necessarily have to use your fiber technicians. You can use an installer to do that, right? So it's not gonna require any kind of special training. That person doesn't need to know how to terminate fiber because it's already terminated. Now they do need to know basics. Don't pull too hard. Don't exceed your bend radiuses and stuff like that. And you don't have to outfit that technician with specific tools like a cleave tool and a Sapphire scribe and a polishing puck and paper and all that other fun stuff because it's already terminated, and already tested. The disadvantages to pre-terminated fiber. Hey, Bill, how you doing, buddy? The disadvantages to pre-terminated fiber. You better get your distances measured right. There's an old adage in carpentry, measure twice, cut once. It applies to pre-terminated fiber, right? So measure the length that you need, double check it, triple check it, have somebody else check it, and then order it. A lot of times when I was ordering pre-terminated fiber for projects, I would always order it a little bit longer than I thought it needed to be. So I would measure it, double check that measurement, and then I would always add a little extra because it's easier just to do a storage loop for a fiber underneath the floor in a pull box than to be 1 foot short. So I always order just a little bit extra for that very, very reason. Now keep in mind, with pre-terminated fiber trunk assemblies, even though they come pre-terminated, even though they come pre-tested, there might be a scenario, and and the company that I work for is one of those. Even though it comes pre-terminated and pre-tested, they still require you to test it in the field after you've installed it. Now you're probably wondering, well, why? It's already terminated and tested. The reason they want you to test it after you've installed it, even though they know that it's good, is to make sure that you didn't pull too hard on something, you didn't break something. Okay, that's what that test is for. It's for warranty purposes generally. So a lot of manufacturers will make you test them afterwards, even though that's been tested at the factory. Now let's talk about pulling in raw fiber and then terminating it. What's the advantages on that? Well, number one, you don't have to be so specific with your measurements because you're gonna do it in the field. You're gonna pull it, you're gonna cut it, you're gonna terminate it. It's gonna take a little bit longer to install when you compare it to a pre-terminated fiber assembly. You're not going to get as good as termination in the field as you will on a pre-terminated fiber. Most of your pre-terminated fiber cables at the plant, they're in clean room environments, and they use better grade lapping film and adhesives, better tools than most technicians, not all, most technicians have access to in the field. So generally, they're going to be way better terminations, lower loss than the ones you're going to get in the field. And think about this. If you're in the field and you're pulling and terminating fiber on a site, generally you're doing it at the tail end of the project, and there's dust, dirt, and debris floating around because the cleaners are, vacuuming and cleaning up the floors. Well, the number one enemy of fiber is what? Dust, dirt, and debris, right? So that's a disadvantage here. So there are disadvantages and disadvantages. Let's talk about technicians. If you've got some people working for you and they just don't know a whole lot about fiber, preterm's your way to go. If you got a unique scenario where you're pulling cable through conduit and a preterm might have some issues with pulling heads, stuff like that, and you've got people on board who can terminate, test fiber pretty good, then pull in the raw cordage and then terminate it in the field. So there's no really one fit there. That's why we have two of them. There's actually, then you've got the splice-on connectors and a bunch of other stuff as well. So there's lots of different options because no one solution is the answer to everything. That's why they have that. So Generally, when I was an estimator, I like the preterm stuff, because as an estimator, you don't know which crew is actually going to go out there and install it. When the company I worked for, it was a larger company, and we had, I don't know, 8 or 9 crews. And there were some crews that were excellent with fiber. There was other crews that all they did was copper. So I would use pre-terminated fiber because I didn't know which crew was going to be assigned that project. And that way I knew it'd go, no problems with installing it. So there you go. Okay, question number 7. This one comes from Georgia. Is there a difference between U/UTP and UTP? This is an easy one. The answer is no, they're exactly the same. Now you probably wonder, well, they're the same. Why do they have different names? U/UTP is a global abbreviation for unshielded twisted pair cabling. And then UTP is what we use in North America. So the global abbreviations, they always put one letter, a slash, and then the letters behind that. So the first letter always tells you if there's an overall shield or not. So the U/UTP means there's no overall full shield. On the other side of the slash, if it says UTP, that means the 4 pair inside of that cable, none of them have a full shield. So U/UTP is a true unshielded cable. You have U/FTP. I talked about that earlier. You also have S/FTP. So you have a shielded and then all the 4 pairs also have a full shield. So when it has that kind of format, that's a global abbreviation. And then in America, we just kind of stick to STP or UTP or something simple like that. Okay. 6:27. We got 3 minutes left. I got one question left. If you have any questions, now start typing. Okay. And this one came from New York. It says, Chuck, can I use water pipe as a ground? If I'm the project manager, the answer is no. Stay away from it. Technically, yes, you can. If you read in the Big Team TDMM manual, it's going to tell you, yes, it actually says warning. Warning, you can use a cold water pipe as a ground. Matter of fact, what does it say? I actually wrote it down because I thought it was kind of interesting how they worded it. With great caution. Great caution. I like that. And also never be used as a single ground source. What do they mean by that? They mean if you have access to put in a ground rod, you should always do that first. If you have access to structural steel, you should do that first. Why not use a cold water pipe? It's copper. That's what the ground's made out of. It goes into the earth. Why can't you use that? Okay. You can't use that because, well, you can technically. The code book allows it. And then obviously Bixie and the TDMM says you can if you use it with great caution. But if you do use it, there are some things that have to happen. Those things are, number one, you got to make sure that you're using another ground source as well. So it's got to be a supplement, can't be a primary source. And with that attachment to that cold water pipe has to be within 5 feet of where that cold water pipe goes through the wall outside. The theory behind that is if it's within 5 feet, if somebody splices that copper or something, we'll see that change. The theory behind that. So it's got to be within 5 feet. Then it also has to be on the street side of a water meter. All right. So let's say the water pipe comes in, it turns, you got a water meter, and then the pipe goes to the rest of the house. You don't want to put it on the right side. You want to put it on the street side because remember that this got pick up, it has to have enough copper material to give it current to go through to the ground. If it's going through that water meter, there's nothing there. If you got some kind of a insulating joint or some other kind of meter, you're going to have to strap that with a piece of ground wire, right? And here's the kicker. You have to have 10 feet of direct earth contact with that metal pipe. 10 feet of direct earth contact. There's only one way to figure out if you have 10 feet of direct earth contact, and that's with a shovel, right? I know a lot of technicians. I don't know any that carry a shovel on their truck because in order to verify you have 10 feet of direct earth contact, you got to dig up 10 feet of the earth down to the water pipe to make sure that there's 10 feet of copper, right? So, what's it say? So George says, shock someone who was on the toilet or washing their hands. Here's the thing. And this happens a lot, especially when we did a huge project for a nationwide insurance carrier when I worked for another company. And we went to their 50,000 stores across the United States. And a lot of those places are actually out of people's homes because most insurance agents work out of their home. And this is something we struggle with. If you attach to a cold water pipe in the basement somewhere, in the middle of the thing, you don't know if 10 feet down in a year or so that piece has to be replaced with PVC, or it might have already been replaced with PVC. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, Chuck, I'll get out my volt-ohm meter and I'll check for continuity to make sure that it's still good. Guess what? Water's conductive. So you will get continuity, even if it has PVC spliced in the middle of it. So that's why you're not really supposed to use it as a primary source. It should only be done as a secondary source. So those are the questions I had. Anybody have any questions for tonight? We're at 6:31. We're already 1 minute over. I'll give you an extra minute or so to see if anybody has any questions that they want to put on tonight. I already told you about the interesting interview coming up for next week's show. Christopher Hobbs from Bixie. That's going to be great. I can't wait for that interview. Can't wait. And then I'm going to talk to Tim Coleman. He wants to do another show. Can't wait for that one as well. So we're going to, if you have a code question that you want explained in depth, make sure you send me that question, and I'm going to set up an interview with him again. I really want to dive in on wet locations because that's a confusing one for most people. All righty. So I don't see any questions coming in, and we're at our 30-minute mark. So with that being said, my chicken's done. It's time for me to go eat dinner. Until next week, everybody, be safe out there.